The wind howled across the frozen wasteland that was once the beautiful world of Kethera Prime, where green forests and crystal lakes had sparkled under twin suns just months ago. Now only endless white ice stretched to every horizon. The temperature had dropped so low that even the air itself seemed to crack and shatter. Nala pressed her 3 precious eggs closer to her chest as another blast of freezing wind tried to tear them from her arms. Her large reptilian body shivered violently despite her thick scales. Ice crystals formed on her dark green hide and fell away with each labored breath. Her powerful wings, once strong enough to carry her across continents, now felt heavy and stiff with cold. The eggs were dying. She could feel it happening. Each egg was about the size of a human head, smooth and beautiful like polished amber. They had once glowed with warm golden light from within, pulsing gently with the heartbeats of the baby dragons growing inside. Now that glow was fading. The amber color was slowly turning to a deadly blue-white as the cold seeped through their shells. "Hold on, my little ones," Nala whispered to her unborn children. Her voice was rough and painful. "Mother will find a way." She looked back at what remained of her home. The great crystal caves where her people had lived for thousands of years were now tombs of ice. The hegemony forces had come without warning, bringing with them a terrible weapon that froze entire worlds. They called it the Ice Death, and it left nothing alive in its wake. Daughter-mate Korvac had died trying to protect their nest. She could still see his final moments in her mind. The brave dragon had fought against 20 hegemony soldiers, his fire breath melting their weapons and armor. But there had been too many of them. They had shot him down with ice bullets that froze his blood in his veins. Before dying, Korvac had managed to gasp out one last message: the eggs. Save the eggs, ... Find the Warmbloods. The Warmbloods, Nala had heard stories about them from the few traders who had escaped other frozen worlds. They were called humans, and they were said to be strange creatures who carried fire inside their bodies. Some refugees claimed these humans would help anyone in need, even aliens they had never seen before. Nala had thought these stories were just fairy tales. What kind of species would help strangers for no reason? Every other race in the galaxy fought only for themselves, their families, or their tribes. The idea of helping someone just because they needed help seemed impossible. But now, with her children dying in her arms and nowhere else to turn, fairy tales were her only hope. She spread her wings and looked up at the frozen sky. Through the swirling snow clouds, she could barely see the stars. Somewhere out there, orbiting the gas giant called Nexus 7, was supposed to be a human research station. The traders had said it was small, with only 1 or 2 humans living there. Could she make it that far? The journey would take her through the vacuum of space for several hours. Dragons could survive in space for short periods by holding their breath and using their wings to navigate, but she was already weak from the cold, and carrying 3 eggs would make the flight even harder. She looked down at her precious babies one more time. The glow inside them was getting dimmer. If she stayed here, they would definitely die within the next few hours. If she tried to fly to the human station, they might die anyway, but at least there was a chance. "We're going on a journey, little ones," she told the eggs softly. "Mother is going to take you to meet some very strange creatures. I hope they are as kind as the stories say." Nala took the deepest breath her lungs could hold and launched herself into the sky. Her wings caught the thin atmosphere and carried her up through the clouds of frozen snow. The air grew thinner and colder as she climbed higher and higher. Soon, she was flying through the star-filled darkness of space itself. Her body began to shut down non-essential functions to conserve oxygen and heat. She could hold her breath for about 6 hours if she was careful. But the cold was making everything harder. The eggs felt like ice against her chest. She tried to share what little body heat she had left, but it was not enough. She could sense the life force in her children getting weaker with each passing minute. Hours passed in the cold silence of space. Nala's wings moved automatically, following the navigation instincts that all dragons were born with. She aimed for the small point of light that marked Nexus 7 and its moons. Her vision began to blur from lack of oxygen. Her wing muscles ached and burned. Ice crystals formed in her nostrils and around her eyes. But still, she kept flying, driven by a mother's desperate love. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she saw it. A tiny metal structure orbiting the gas giant covered in blinking lights and strange antenna arrays. The human research station. Nala's strength was almost gone. She could barely keep her wings moving. The eggs in her arms had stopped glowing completely and were now cold as stones. But she was so close. Just a little further. She aimed for what looked like a large opening in the station's hull. Her dragon instincts told her it was some kind of landing bay. But as she got closer, she realized she was flying too fast and was too weak to slow down. Properly. The station grew larger and larger in her vision. Warning lights began flashing around the landing bay. Some kind of invisible force grabbed her body and guided her inside. The last thing Nala remembered was the sensation of hitting the metal floor and rolling to a stop. As darkness closed around her vision, she felt warm air touching her scales for the first time in months. Somewhere in the distance she could hear footsteps running toward her. A voice was speaking in a language she didn't understand, but the tone sounded worried and kind. Maybe the fairy tales were true after all. Her grip on the 3 eggs loosened as consciousness slipped away. In her last moment of awareness, she felt gentle hands taking the eggs from her arms. The touch was warm, warmer than anything she had felt since the ice death came to her world. "Please," she whispered in the common galactic language, hoping this strange warm blood could understand her. "Save my babies." Then everything went dark. Dr. Jiho Kim had been drinking his morning coffee when the proximity alarms started screaming throughout Research Station Horizon. He nearly dropped his mug as he rushed to the main control panel, his bare feet slapping against the cold metal floor. The scanner display showed something impossible. A large organic life form was approaching the station at dangerous speed. The thermal readings were all wrong. Whatever this creature was, it was dying from cold exposure in the vacuum of the space. "What in the world?" Jiho muttered as he watched the strange readings. The creature was huge, easily the size of a small shuttlecraft, but the biosignatures showed it was definitely alive. Barely alive. Jiho had been stationed alone at this remote research outpost for 8 months, studying the gas giant's unusual radiation patterns. He was a xenobiologist by training, but he had never encountered anything like this. In fact, he had never encountered any alien life at all during his career. The creature was heading straight for the station's emergency docking bay. Jiho quickly activated the tractor beam system and took manual control. His hands shook slightly as he guided the mysterious being safely inside the pressurized chamber. Through the observation window, Jiho watched as atmosphere flooded into the bay. The creature hit the deck hard and rolled several times before coming to a stop. It was the most beautiful and terrifying thing he had ever seen. The being looked like a dragon from ancient Earth legends. She was covered in dark green scales that sparkled even under the harsh artificial lights. Her wings were massive, easily spanning 12 meters from tip to tip. Her head was long and elegant, with intelligent golden eyes that were now closed in exhaustion. But what caught Jiho's attention most were the 3 objects clutched tightly against her chest. They looked like eggs, each one about the size of a basketball. They were translucent and beautiful, like amber gemstones, but they were turning blue-white with frost. Jiho grabbed his emergency medical kit and environmental suit, then rushed into the docking bay. The dragon creature was breathing, but each breath was shallow and labored. Ice crystals covered her scales and her body temperature was dangerously low. As he knelt beside her, the creature's golden eyes slowly opened. She looked at him with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. When she spoke, her voice was weak, but the universal translator in Jiho's suit picked up her words clearly. "Please," she whispered. "My babies, they are dying." Jiho looked at the 3 eggs in her arms. He could see now that they had once glowed with internal light, but that glow was fading fast. Whatever these creatures were, the eggs needed warmth to survive. "I will help you," Jiho said, surprised by his own certainty. He had no protocol for this situation, no training for dealing with unknown alien species, but looking into those desperate, golden eyes, he knew he had to try. The dragon mother's name was Nala. He learned as he carefully moved her to the station's medical bay. She told him about her world, about the ice death weapon that had frozen everything she loved. She explained how her mate had died defending their nest, and how she had flown through space for hours to reach his station. "My people need constant warmth to live," Nala explained weakly as Jiho wrapped heating blankets around her body. "The eggs must stay warm or the babies inside will die. On my world, we have special caves heated by underground fires. The mothers take turns keeping the eggs warm with their bodies." Jiho ran every medical scan he could think of on the eggs. What he discovered amazed him. The baby dragons inside were still alive, but their life signs were getting weaker every minute. The eggs needed a very specific temperature and humidity level to survive. They also needed something else that his instruments could barely detect. "They need biorhythmic warmth," Jiho said, studying the data. "Not just heat, but the kind of warmth that comes from a living body. The babies can sense their mother's heartbeat and breathing patterns through the shell." Nala's eyes filled with tears. "I am too cold, too weak. I cannot give them what they need anymore. My body temperature has dropped too low." Jiho stared at the readings on his medical scanner. According to the data, human body temperature was almost exactly what the eggs needed. Human heart rate and breathing patterns were also surprisingly close to what Nala's species normally provided. It was crazy. It was dangerous. It was completely against every safety protocol he had ever learned. But as Jiho looked at the dying eggs and then at Nala's desperate face, he made a decision that would change both their lives forever. "I have an idea," he said quietly, "but you have to trust me." Over the next few hours, Jiho worked frantically to create a makeshift incubation system. He used his own body as the heat source, designing special harnesses that would hold the eggs against his chest and back. Medical sensors monitored the temperature and humidity constantly, while heating elements made tiny adjustments to keep everything perfect. Nala watched in amazement as this strange hairless creature risked his own life to save her children. She had never seen such kindness from someone who owed her nothing. Most species in the galaxy only help their own kind, and only when they expected something in return. Why are you doing this? She asked as Jiho carefully positioned the first egg against his chest. The warmth of his body immediately began to revive the fading glow inside the shell. Jiho paused and looked at her seriously. Because they need help, he said simply, and I can give it. As the first day passed, the eggs began to stabilize. Their inner glow grew stronger and their biosigns improved. Jiho barely slept, constantly checking the monitoring equipment and adjusting the incubation parameters. Nala recovered her strength while watching this incredible human dedicate his entire life to her unborn children. She began to understand that humans were truly different from every other species she had ever heard of. They didn't help others to gain power or profit. They helped because it was the right thing to do. Your species, she said to Jiho on the third day, you are not like the others, are you? Jiho smiled tiredly as he checked the temperature readings on the eggs. All three were now glowing brightly with healthy golden light. I guess we're just built different, he said. 3 weeks had passed since Nala crashed into Jiho's research station, and the human had not left the eggs alone for more than a few minutes at a time. He carried them with him everywhere, the specially designed harnesses distributing their weight across his chest and back. Jiho had lost weight and his eyes were red from lack of sleep, but he never complained. Every few hours he would check the bioreadings, adjust the temperature controls, and make small improvements to the incubation system. His dedication amazed Nala more each day. You should rest, she told him as she watched him work at his computer terminal. The 3 eggs nestled against his body. You are pushing yourself too hard. I'm fine, Jiho replied. Though his voice was tired, the readings show the babies are developing well. Their neural activity has increased by 40%. Since we started, I think they're actually growing faster than normal. Nala moved closer to look at the data on his screen. Her recovery had been remarkable once she was warm again. Her scales had regained their healthy dark green color, and her strength was almost fully restored, but she was worried about her human friend. In my culture, she said softly, when a dragon takes care of eggs that are not their own, we call them an honored parent. The babies will carry their bond with you for their entire lives. Jiho looked up at her with surprise. Really? That seems like a big responsibility. It is the greatest honor among my people, Nala explained, but I never thought it could happen with someone from another species. What you are doing no one has ever done before. The medical scanners beeped softly, drawing their attention to new readings. The eggs were showing increased activity. Inside each shell, the baby dragons were moving more and responding to sounds from outside. They know your voice, Nala said with wonder. Listen, she made a soft trilling sound, the kind mother dragons used to communicate with their unborn young. The eggs pulsed gently with golden light in response. Then Jiho tried speaking to them in his calm, steady voice. Hello there, little ones. How are you feeling today? The response was immediate and strong. All 3 eggs glowed brightly and seemed to pulse in rhythm with Jiho's heartbeat. The babies inside were clearly recognizing him as their caregiver. Incredible, Jiho whispered. They're bonding with me. The bio-readings show they're actually synchronizing their development patterns to match human physiological cycles. Over the following days, Jiho made detailed notes about everything he observed. He was a scientist first, and this was the discovery of a lifetime. But more than that, he was becoming genuinely attached to the 3 little lives depending on him. He started talking to the eggs regularly, telling them about Earth and human culture. He played them music from his personal collection, everything from classical symphonies to modern pop songs. The babies seemed to respond most strongly to pieces with strong rhythmic patterns. You're teaching them to be part human, Nala observed. One day as she watched Jiho gently pat one of the eggs while humming a lullaby. Is that bad? Jiho asked, suddenly worried. I don't want to interfere with their natural development. Nala thought carefully before answering. My people have very old legends, she said finally. Stories about dragons who were raised by other species and became bridges between worlds. We always thought they were just myths. But now I wonder, as the weeks passed, other changes became apparent. The research station began receiving strange communication signals from across the galaxy. Refugee ships were sending coded messages, asking if the rumors were true. Had a human really saved dragon eggs? Was there a place where desperate alien parents could bring their endangered children? How did word spread so fast? Jiho asked as he decoded another message. This one was from a species called the Vorthok, asking if humans could help incubate their crystal larvae. Refugee networks share information quickly, Nala explained. When you have nothing left but hope, you listen carefully to every story that might help your family survive. Jiho realized that his simple act of kindness was becoming something much larger. Across the galaxy, alien parents facing extinction were looking to humans as potential saviors for their children. It was both, if inspiring and terrifying. I'm just one person, he said, staring at the growing pile of distress calls. I can't help everyone, but you proved it was possible, Nala replied. You showed that humans have something other species need, something we never knew existed. She was right. Jiho's research data was showing remarkable results. Human body, chemistry, temperature, and biorhythms were compatible with a surprising variety of alien life forms. More importantly, humans seem to have an instinctive ability to adapt their behavior to meet the needs of other species' offspring. It's like we're natural caregivers, Jiho mused as he reviewed his notes. Our evolutionary history of cooperative, child rearing, our ability to form emotional bonds with other species, our problem-solving skills when it comes to nurturing, it all adds up to something unique. The eggs were now so active that Jiho could feel the babies moving inside them. They had grown significantly and their golden glow was bright and steady. According to Nala's knowledge of dragon development, they would hatch within the next few days. "Are you ready to meet them?" she asked him one evening as they sat together in the station's small observation lounge, watching the gas giant's colorful storms swirl below them. Jiho touched the largest egg gently. "I'm nervous," he admitted. "What if they don't accept me once they hatch? What if they need things I can't provide?" Nala smiled, showing her sharp but somehow friendly teeth. "Jiho, these babies have known only your voice, your heartbeat, your warmth since before they were born. In every way that matters, you are their parent now. They will love you as much as they love me." That night, as Jiho tried to sleep with the 3 precious eggs nestled against him, he felt the first small crack appear in the largest shell. It was time. The first baby dragon was about to enter the world, and the first human-alien parent bond in galactic history was about to be tested. The crack in the largest egg spread slowly across its surface like a golden spiderweb. Jiho sat perfectly still, afraid that any sudden movement might disturb the hatching process. Nala crouched beside him, her golden eyes fixed on her firstborn. "Child, how long does this usually take?" Jiho whispered. "Hours, sometimes a full day," Nala replied softly. "The babies choose their own time. They will come out when they feel safe." As if responding to their voices, the egg pulsed with bright light and the cracks widened. A small piece of shell fell away, revealing a tiny golden eye that blinked curiously at the world. Jiho held his breath as more shell fragments dropped away. Slowly, a small head emerged, no bigger than his fist. The baby dragon looked exactly like a miniature version of Nala with the same dark green scales and intelligent golden eyes. But when it opened its mouth to make its first sound, something unexpected happened. Instead of the trilling call that newborn dragons normally made, the baby let out a soft sound that was almost like a human baby's coo. It looked directly at Jiho's face and reached out with one tiny clawed hand toward him. "Taiho," Nala said immediately, giving the baby dragon its name. "He knows you." Jiho carefully reached out and let the tiny creature grab his finger. Taiho's grip was surprisingly strong, and his scales were warm and soft. The baby dragon studied Jiho's face with intense curiosity, as if trying to memorize every detail. "Hello, little one," Jiho said gently. "I've been taking care of you for weeks. It's nice to finally meet you." Taiho responded by making that strange, cooing sound again and crawling fully out of his shell. He was about the size of a small cat, with wings that were still too small for flying. Without hesitation, he climbed up Jiho's arm and settled against his neck, exactly where he had been positioned inside the egg for weeks. "He's claiming you as his parent," Nala said with amazement. "This is not normal dragon behavior. Usually newborns are afraid of everything except their mother." Within hours, the second egg began to crack. This baby was slightly smaller and had a different personality entirely. While Taiho had been bold and curious, this little dragon was more cautious. She studied both Jiho and Nala carefully before deciding to emerge. Mingi, Nala named her as the baby dragon, finally crawled out of her shell. Mingi was just as beautiful as her brother, but her scales had a slightly different pattern and her eyes held a thoughtful intelligence. She approached Jiho slowly, touching his hand with her nose before accepting him as safe. The third baby, Doyan, hatched just as the station's night cycle began. He was the largest of the 3 and seemed to be the natural leader. As soon as he was free of his shell, he made soft chirping sounds to his siblings, who immediately moved closer to him. All 3 babies showed the same unusual behavior. They were completely comfortable with Jiho, accepting him as naturally as they accepted their biological mother. But more than that, they seemed to have inherited something from their time in human care. "Look at this," Jiho said, showing Nala his tablet computer. Taiho had been watching him work and had somehow managed to activate the device by touching it in just the right way. "Dragons don't normally interact with technology like this, do they?" "Never," Nala said, staring at her son in wonder. "We prefer natural methods for everything. Technology is something we use when we must, but we don't understand it instinctively." But Taiho clearly did understand it. Within days he was helping Jiho operate various devices around the station. He seemed to grasp the connection between cause and effect in mechanical systems almost immediately. Minji showed different abilities. She was fascinated by the station's life support systems and seemed to understand how they worked to maintain temperature and air quality. She would spend hours watching the environmental controls, her little head tilted in concentration. Dojan's gift was social. He could sense the emotions of both humans and dragons with remarkable accuracy. When Jiho was tired or stressed, Doyan would curl up against him and make soothing sounds. When Nala was sad thinking about her lost mate, Doyen would gently nuzzle her until she felt better. They're not just dragons, Jiho realized as he watched his three unusual children play together. There's something new, something that combines the best traits of both our species. Word of the successful hatching spread quickly through the refugee networks. Within days, the research station was receiving dozens of emergency calls from desperate alien parents. A ship full of Zentari refugees was asking if humans could help their egg pods survive a deadly fungal infection. A lone Makari father was begging for help with his crystalline larvae that were slowly dissolving in the wrong atmospheric conditions. We can't help them all, Jiho said, looking at the growing list of requests. I don't have the resources or the knowledge, but Nala had been thinking about this problem. What if we didn't have to help them all alone, she suggested. What if we could teach other humans how to do what you did? Jiho had been documenting everything from the beginning. His research notes contained detailed information about temperature requirements, biorhythm matching, nutritional needs, and emotional bonding techniques. The data showed that his success wasn't just luck, it was the result of human traits that could potentially be learned and applied by others. We could create a manual, he said slowly, a guide for human-alien childcare, but who would use it? Most humans have never even seen an alien before. The ones who need to see it will find it, Nala said confidently. Just like I found you. Over the next few weeks, Jiho began reaching out to human colonies and research stations across the galaxy. He sent carefully worded messages explaining his situation and asking if anyone else might be willing to help endangered alien children. The responses surprised him. Scientists, colonists, explorers, and even some military personnel wrote back, expressing interest. Many humans, it seemed, had the same instinctive desire to help that had driven Jiho to save Nala's eggs. It's like it's part of who we are as a species, Jiho told Nala as he read through the messages. When we see someone in need, especially children, we want to help, even if they're not human children. Meanwhile, Taiho Mingi and Doyon continued to grow and develop at an amazing rate. They were learning to fly, but they were also learning to use human tools and technology. They spoke both dragon language and basic human words. Most remarkably, they seemed to instinctively understand how to communicate with other species as well. When the first refugee ship arrived at the station, carrying a desperate alien family with dying children, it was actually Doyon who figured out how to establish communication with them. The little dragon somehow understood their emotional distress and was able to convey to Jiho what they needed. You're not just bridges between humans and dragons, Jiho told his three children as they helped him prepare for the arrival of more refugees. You're bridges between all species. You're something the galaxy has never seen before. The babies chirped happily at his praise, then went back to their work. Taiho was calibrating the medical equipment, Minji was adjusting the environmental controls, and Doyon was practicing the greeting sounds of 6 different alien languages. Change was coming to the galaxy, and it was starting with 3 little dragons who had learned to think like humans while keeping their dragon hearts. 6 months after the hatching, Research Station Horizon looked nothing like the quiet outpost it had once been. What started as a simple scientific facility had transformed into the galaxy's first interspecies nursery, the main docking bay now. They've held 5 different alien ships, each carrying desperate parents and their endangered children. Jiho walked through the expanded living quarters, checking on the various young alien beings that were now thriving under human-assisted care. In one room, a human volunteer named Sora was helping 3 Zentari egg pods recover from fungal infection. In another, a marine biologist called Minho was learning to care for aquatic Kalthani spawn that needed both water and emotional songs to survive. But it was his own 3 children who continued to amaze him most. Taiho, Minji, and Doyon were now the size of large dogs and had become essential to the station's operations. They served as translators, mediators, and bridges between species that had never been able to communicate before. The Borthok family is having trouble with their crystal larvae, Minji reported to Jiho in perfect human speech. She had grown into a thoughtful, analytical young dragon who understood both biological systems and mechanical engineering better than most adult experts. What kind of trouble? Jiho asked, following her toward the visitor quarters. The larvae need harmonic vibrations to properly form their shells, she explained. But the frequencies that work for their species don't match our station's power systems. The interference is disrupting their development. This was exactly the kind of problem that would have been impossible to solve before. The Borthok parents couldn't communicate their needs clearly to humans, and humans had no knowledge of crystal-based life forms. But Minji had spent time with both groups, learning their languages and understanding their biology. I think I can modify the power grid to eliminate the interference, she continued. Taiho helped me design a filtering system that should work. Jiho found his oldest son in the main engineering section, working alongside a human technician to install the new harmonic filters. Taiho had grown into a brilliant problem solver who could interface with human technology as naturally as breathing. His dragon instincts for spatial reasoning combined with human-learned analytical thinking made him incredibly effective at fixing complex systems. Almost finished, Dad, Taiho called out, using the human word that all three children had adopted. Oh, this should solve the vibration problem and make the station more comfortable for crystal-based species in general. The third child, Do Yen, was in the diplomatic center that had been added to the station's original structure. He was the largest of the three and had become their natural leader, but his real gift was emotional intelligence. He could sense the feelings and needs of dozens of different species and help them understand each other. The Kelthani parents are worried about their spawn, Doyen told Jiho as he approached. They think the human caregiver doesn't truly care about their children because he doesn't sing to them correctly. But Minho has been working so hard to learn their songs, Jiho said. I know, and his intentions are good, Doyen replied. But the Kelthani judge emotional sincerity by vocal harmonics that humans can't naturally produce. They think he's just going through the motions. This was the kind of subtle cultural barrier that had prevented interspecies cooperation for thousands of years. But Doyen had a solution. I've been working with both sides, he continued. I taught Minho how to express his genuine care through human actions that the Kelthani can understand, and I helped the Kelthani parents see that humans show love differently than they do, but just as deeply. Watching his three children work together to solve problems that had seemed impossible, Jiho realized that something revolutionary was happening. They weren't just successful examples of cross-species child rearing, they were creating an entirely new model for how different alien civilizations could interact. You're not just bridges between species, he told them during their evening meal. Together, you're proving that cooperation is possible on a level no one ever imagined. The children exchanged glances, and Jiho could see they had been discussing something important among themselves. We've been thinking about that, Taiho said carefully. About our purpose and what we're supposed to do with these abilities. We have the galaxy is at war, Minji added. The hegemony forces are conquering worlds by turning species against each other. They use fear and prejudice to make everyone believe that aliens are enemies who can't be trusted. But we're living proof that's not true, Doyen concluded. We exist because different species can care for each other's children. We're stronger because we learned both human and dragon ways of thinking. Nala, who had been listening quietly, finally spoke up. What are you saying, my children? We think we need to do more than just help refugees, Taiho explained. We need to show the galaxy that there's another way to live. That species can work together instead of fighting each other. Over the following weeks, the three young dragons began developing their idea. They wanted to create a network of interspecies care centers throughout the galaxy, each one staffed by human-alien partnerships. The goal wasn't just to save endangered children, but to create new generations of beings who could think and communicate across species lines. It's ambitious, Jiho admitted as he reviewed their plans, but the data supports it. Every child we've helped here has developed enhanced abilities for cross-species communication and cooperation. The research was undeniable. Human-assisted childcare wasn't just keeping alien children alive, it was creating individuals with unprecedented abilities to bridge cultural and biological differences. They were natural diplomats, innovators, and peacemakers. The hegemony won't like this, Nala warned. They maintain control by keeping species isolated and suspicious of each other. If word spreads that cooperation is possible, their entire power structure could collapse. Then we need to move quickly, Doyen said with determination, before they can stop us. The first expansion site was already being prepared on a neutral moon near the galactic core. Human volunteers were being trained in the care techniques that Geo had developed, while alien families were spreading word through refugee networks about the new hope for their children. But as they planned for the future, none of them realized that hegemony intelligence had already detected the unusual activity around Research Station Horizon. Fleet Admiral Corvus, the military leader responsible for the ice death weapon that had destroyed Nala's world, was already assembling a strike force. Sir, his intelligence officer reported, the readings suggest they're creating some kind of interspecies alliance. The threat assessment is unprecedented. Admiral Corvus studied the reports with growing concern. For centuries, the hegemony had maintained control by exploiting the natural mistrust between different species. If that mistrust could be overcome, their entire empire was at risk. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We end this before it spreads. But he had no idea what he was about to face. The children of Research Station Horizon were no longer the helpless refugees they had once been. They were something new, something powerful, and something that would change the galaxy forever. The hegemony fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a dark storm cloud, 30 massive warships surrounding Research Station Horizon. Admiral Corvus had brought enough firepower to destroy a small planet, confident that this would be a simple show of overwhelming force. Attention Research Station Horizon. His voice boomed across all communication channels. You are harboring illegal aliens and conducting unauthorized genetic experiments. Surrender all alien refugees and their offspring immediately, or face complete destruction. Jiho stood in the station's command center, his heart pounding as he watched the scanner displays. Beside him, Nala's scales had darkened with anger, while his 3 children remained surprisingly calm. We should run, whispered Sora, one of the human volunteers who had come to help with the refugee children. We can't fight 30 warships with one research station. No, Do-yeon said firmly, his young voice carrying surprising authority. Running won't solve anything. The Admiral will just hunt down every station like ours and destroy them one by one. Tae-ho was already at the communications console, his claws dancing across the control panels with inhuman speed. I'm sending messages to all the families we've helped, he reported. If we're going to make a stand, we need everyone to know what's happening. What's the point? Minho asked desperately. Even if word gets out, no one can get here in time to help us. Minji looked up from the sensor array she had been monitoring. Actually, she said with a slight smile, I think help is already here. On the main display, new contacts began appearing. Ships were dropping out of hyperspace all around the hegemony fleet. Not warships, but civilian vessels of every size and description. Refugee transports, trading ships, exploration vessels, and even a few old mining craft. What is this? Admiral Corvus demanded over the open channel. The response came not from the research station, but from the ragtag fleet of civilian ships now surrounding his forces. Dozens of different voices, speaking dozens of different languages, but all saying essentially the same thing. We stand with Research Station Horizon. These humans saved our children. You will not harm the ones who gave us hope. Admiral Corvus stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His 30 warships were now outnumbered 3-1 by civilian vessels. Individually, none of them posed a real threat. But together, they represented something he had never encountered before, an alliance based on gratitude and genuine cooperation rather than fear or profit. This is Admiral Corvus of the Hegemony, 4th Fleet, he announced to the assembled civilian ships. Disperse immediately or be destroyed along with the station. You have 5 minutes to comply. The response surprised everyone, including Ji-ho. It came from his own 3 children, speaking in perfect unison across all communication frequencies. But they weren't speaking just one language. They were simultaneously translating their words into every language represented in the civilian fleet. Admiral Corvus, their combined voices said, We are Tae-ho, Minji, and Do-yeon. We were dying as eggs when the human Ji-ho Kim saved our lives. We grew up learning that different species can care for each other's children. We learned that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Enough of this nonsense, the Admiral snapped. You are genetic aberrations created by illegal experimentation. The natural order demands that species remain separate and pure. The natural order, Do-yeon replied calmly, brought us to a human who chose kindness over safety. The natural order created bonds between species that your empire cannot understand or break. As the children spoke, something remarkable was happening throughout the civilian fleet. Ship after ship began powering up systems that had nothing to do with weapons. Mining vessels activated their industrial cutting beams. Transport ships positioned themselves to use their cargo manipulators as shields. Even the smallest personal craft began working together in coordinated patterns. They're not trying to fight the warships directly, Tae-ho observed, studying the tactical movements. They're creating a defensive network. Each ship is contributing whatever unique capability it has. The Zentari ships, with their advanced sensor arrays, formed an early warning system. The Kelthani vessels, built for deep space travel, provided communication relays that kept the entire fleet connected. The crystal-based Borthok craft generated interference fields that made targeting difficult. It's like an immune system, Mingi said with wonder. Each different species is contributing their natural strengths to protect the whole group. Admiral Corvus realized he was facing something his military training had never prepared him for. This wasn't a battle between competing forces, it was a protection response from dozens of species working as a single organism. Open fire, he ordered his fleet, destroy them all. The first hegemony energy beams lanced out toward the civilian ships, but something impossible happened. The combined defensive network actually held. Mining ships used their industrial shields to absorb hits intended for smaller vessels. Transport craft coordinated their movements to minimize casualties. The entire fleet moved like a living thing, each part protecting the others. But the most surprising response came from the children on Research Station Horizon. As soon as the shooting started, Tae-ho, Minji, and Do-yeon launched themselves into space without environmental suits. What are they doing? Ji-ho shouted in panic, but Nala was smiling with fierce pride. They are fully grown now, she said. Adult dragons can survive in space indefinitely, and they have learned to fight like humans think. The 3 young dragons flew through space with incredible grace. But they weren't attacking the hegemony ships directly. Instead, they were doing something far more sophisticated. They were coordinating the entire civilian defense network, using their unique ability to communicate with multiple species simultaneously. Tae-ho flew between the mining ships, showing through them exactly where to position their cutting beams for maximum defensive effect. Minji worked with the transport vessels, helping them optimize their shield formations. Do-yeon moved through the entire fleet like a conductor directing an orchestra, ensuring that every ship knew its role in the larger pattern. Impossible, Admiral Corvus muttered as he watched his supposedly overwhelming firepower being neutralized by a bunch of civilian craft and 3 young dragons. How are they coordinating so effectively? His tactical officer provided the answer. Sir, The dragons appear to be using some kind of instantaneous communication network. They're processing information from hundreds of ships simultaneously and redistributing tactical data faster than our computers can track. This was the true power of what Jiho had created. The children weren't just bridges between species, they were living communication. Networks that could unite different alien civilizations into a single cooperative force. The battle continued for hours, but it wasn't really a battle in any traditional sense. The hegemony fleet threw everything they had at the civilian ships, but the defensive network adapted to every attack. When energy weapons proved ineffective, the admiral tried kinetic bombardment. When that failed, he attempted to divide the fleet by targeting specific species groups. Nothing worked. The bonds created by shared child-rearing experiences and genuine cross-species cooperation proved stronger than any military strategy based on fear and division. "Sir," the tactical officer reported with growing concern, "we're detecting new hyperspace signatures. More civilian ships are arriving every few minutes." Word of the battle was spreading across the galaxy through the refugee networks. Every family that had been helped by humans, every child that had been saved by cross-species cooperation, was sending whatever help they could. The civilian fleet was growing larger by the hour, but the real turning point came when one of the hegemony ships made a critical mistake. A young gunner, frustrated by the ineffective battle, fired directly at Research Station Horizon instead of the defending ships. The energy beam lanced toward the station's reactor core, where dozens of alien children were still being cared for by human volunteers. It should have been a killing blow. Instead, Doyen appeared directly in the beam's path. The young dragon took the full force of the weapon meant to destroy the station, his scales blazing with absorbed energy as he absorbed the lethal blast. For a moment, everyone thought he had been killed. The communication networks fell silent. The civilian fleet stopped moving. Even the hegemony gunners hesitated. Then Doyen spoke, his voice carrying across every communication channel in the system. But he wasn't angry or threatening. His voice was sad, almost gentle. "Why do you want to hurt children?" he asked Admiral Corvus directly. "What did those babies ever do to you? They just want to live and grow up and maybe have families of their own someday." The simple question hit harder than any weapon could have. Across the hegemony fleet, soldiers began to ask themselves the same thing. What were they really fighting for? Why were they trying to destroy a place where people cared for children? "Because the natural order demands species purity," Admiral Corvus replied, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "I am the child of a dragon and a human," Doyen said simply. "My brother and sister are the same. We exist because two species chose to care for each other. Are we not natural? Are we not worthy of life?" The admiral had no answer for that. One by one, hegemony ships began powering down their weapons. Soldiers who had joined the military to protect their families found themselves questioning orders to attack those who protected other families. The rigid hierarchy that held the hegemony together began to crack. "This is Fleet Captain Yuna," came a voice from one of the hegemony destroyers. "I cannot fire on children regardless of their species. I am withdrawing from this engagement." "Captain Yuna, you are in violation of direct orders," Admiral Corvus snapped. "Then court-martial me," Captain Yuna replied. "I became a soldier, to protect innocent lives, not to destroy them." Other ships began following her lead. Within an hour, more than half of the hegemony fleet had either withdrawn or switched sides entirely. The remaining ships found themselves outnumbered and surrounded by former allies. Admiral Corvus realized that his empire's greatest fear had come true. The bonds created by interspecies cooperation were stronger than the fear and hatred that held the hegemony together. Once people saw that cooperation was possible, they would never accept oppression again. "This isn't over," he transmitted as his remaining ships prepared to retreat. "The hegemony will not tolerate this rebellion." "You're right," Jiho replied, speaking for the first time since the battle began. "This isn't over. It's just beginning." As the hegemony forces retreated, the civilian fleet and the defecting warships began working together to establish the first truly cooperative interspecies government the galaxy had ever seen. Research Station Horizon became the capital of what would eventually be known as the Alliance of Caring Worlds. Taiho Minji and Doyon became the first ambassadors of the new alliance, traveling throughout the galaxy to establish more childcare centers and teach other species the techniques that Jiho had developed. Wherever they went, they carried the message that had started it all: when different species choose to care for each other's children, they create bonds that cannot be broken by any force in the universe. Years later, as Jiho watched his 3 children lead a council meeting with representatives from over 100 different species, he reflected on the chain of events that had brought them all together. It had started with one desperate mother, carrying 3 dying eggs through the cold of space. It had continued with one human's decision to help, even when he had no idea what he was doing. But it had succeeded because of something deeper than individual heroism or advanced technology. It had succeeded because caring for children, regardless of their species, brought out the best qualities in every intelligent being in the galaxy. The hegemony still existed in the outer systems, but its power was fading as more and more worlds chose cooperation over conquest. The future belonged to those who understood that the greatest strength came not from weapons or wealth, but from the simple willingness to help when help was needed. And at the center of it all were 3 young dragons who had learned to think like humans while keeping their dragon hearts, proving every day that love could indeed conquer fear, and that family could extend far beyond the boundaries of species.